The year was 1990. A man by the name of Satoshi Tajiri, founder of the company Game Freak, pitches a video game to Nintendo. Nintendo turns it down.
Yeah, you heard it right. Pokemon was pitched to Nintendo a few times, and a few times, Nintendo rejected the idea. Not exactly of Pokemon though. The game went through a few name changes throughout the early 90s as the concept became more fleshed out. Originally conceived as capsule monsters, the game's roots were a love letter to Tajiri's memories of bug collecting as a young boy. Due to the urbanization of Japan, no more were children exploring outside. They were, like most children, getting into technology and spending more time at their homes. He looked at the Game Boy and envisioned people communicating with one another and trading with one another. This method of trading information between two devices was new to the video game industry, as link cables were only used for online competitions at that time. Capturing monsters, trading, and battling them. The Pokemon were kept in gachapons, known out west as capsule toys. It was not until Tajiri befriended Shigeru Miyamoto and began mentoring underneath him. That's when the game began to take form and find its footing as Pocket Monsters. Miyamoto suggested that he create two game versions with exclusive monsters to push the trading aspect to the forefront. Speaking of those monsters, Tajiri's longtime friend Ken Sugimori and his team of less than 10 people began the development of about 190 Pokemon, which would be narrowed down to 150 due to limitations. Some of these would be used later on in the franchise's long history, but we'll get to that in another video. The music and the Pokemon cries in this game were composed by Junichi Masuda. Even with the Game Boy's limited hardware, he was able to create some of the most iconic noises in this franchise. At this point, Nintendo loved the concept behind these games, and on February 26, 1996, Pokemon Green and Red were released in Japan. These games were well received, and soon, an upgraded version, a third version, came out, a blue version. This version would be the mold of what we received out west. With the template of blue version and the information between red and green, Pokemon was released in America on September 28, 1998, spending allegedly over $50 million in promotion. And let me tell you, this game exploded. It was Pokemon fever, and it seemed like everybody was infected. To start, there's an animation that plays when you boot up the game. This was their vision, and I'd say they did an outstanding job creating it. This game was amazing. You start off in a town called Pallet. You're given a Pokemon by a man called Oak. You're challenged by a rival who threatens to smell you later. And after all this, it's just the first few minutes of the game. The game is designed to teach you about its core mechanics. When you enter a battle, you're given a few choices. The first one we will go over is the run icon. This allows you to flee a wild encounter. The next icon is item. Choosing this will allow you to access some of the items that you have in your bag. Some items are used for battles, such as potion, antidotes, and Pokemon in the case of a wild encounter, while others are used outside of battles, such as bikes, maps, TMs, and HMs. The third icon is the Pokemon icon. This allows you to see your Pokemon status and the moves of your current party and switch accordingly. Lastly is the fight icon. Each Pokemon can use up to 4 moves, and these moves come in many forms. Damage dealing moves will lower your opponent's hit points, while status moves will affect how the battle is played out for your opponents. Some can raise your stats, while others can lower your opponent's stats. Some inflicted statuses such as poison, confusion, burn, sleep, freezing, and paralysis. And in some cases, moves have the chance to do both. After receiving your first Pokemon, when you make it to Viridian City, you'll realize that there's a few different paths that you can take. If you go north, you'll be stopped by a man who needs his coffee. This was changed in the West, as originally he was too drunk to get out of your way. There's also a Pokemon gym here. The gym is locked though, you do not have access to it. This gives you a clear representation of what a gym looks like, and just the fact that they exist overall. If you go to the west of the city, you'll see a path that you can take. This will lead you to the Indigo Plateau. You won't be able to access it though, as you don't have any badges. This gives you a clear goal to collect gym badges, but be careful as you'll encounter your rival going this way. It sets the stage for another goal, to catch Pokemon. So you make it back to the town, and there are a few buildings that you can walk into. One of which is the Poké Center, which will heal your Pokemon and also offer you a place to go through your Pokemon inside of the Pokemon PC. Another building that you can enter is the Pokemart. This is a one-stop shop of essential items that you'll need for your journey. It is here that you'll be able to buy Pokeballs. But wait, before you can buy any items, the owner of the shop has a parcel for Professor Oak. He entrusts you to take it to him and won't let you buy anything until the fetch quest is done. When you return the pallet to give Oak his parcel, he'll give you and your rival a device called the Pokédex. This is a digital encyclopedia about Pokemon. It sets another goal for you. Fill the Pokédex. So you make your way back to that first town, stock up on items, and start your adventure. This game has a pretty good encounter mechanic when it comes to catching wild Pokemon. Specific tiles have a chance to start a wild encounter. Whether it is in the tall grass in front of Pallet or in the depths of Mount Moon, this mechanic was pretty innovative for the time. Most RPGs went for either a traditional random encounter method or an enemy on the overworld that would lock onto you at a point. Regardless of that, you make your way through the Viridian Forest challenging trainers and catching Pokemon, defeating wild Pokemon, and eventually you'll end up in Pewter City. This is where you challenge your first gym. As of now, the game has been pretty straightforward. You may have already noticed this, and if you haven't, you're about to. There are 15 different elemental types for Pokemon, and they can be a maximum of 2 types each. Depending on who you chose for your starter, that kind of sets a difficulty for the game. There's a rock, paper, scissors dynamic to this game, but more often than not, Psychic would steamroll over most Pokemon. Back to the gyms though. The gym's main dynamic is based around Pokemon types, for the most part. Gyms are full of aspiring trainers, simple mazes, and one leader that if you beat them will reward you with a TM and a badge. In these games, the badges are more than bragging rights. They boost certain attributes for the Pokemon on your team, allowing you to master a higher level of Pokemon. Your main goal is to collect all 8 gym badges to prove that you have what it takes to challenge the strongest trainers in all of Kanto, the Elite Four. Other than that, another main quest, arguably the main quest of the whole game, is to help Professor Oak complete his life goal of filling out the Pokédex. There are 124 different available Pokemon in each game without trading, events, or glitches. With trading, this number is a solid 150. But Game Freak didn't stop there. In the Cinnabar Mansion, you find a few journals documenting an unknown Pokemon called Mew. Game Freak programmer Shigeaki Morimoto programmed Mew secretly into the game as a prank amongst the staffs, just prior to its release in Japan, intending for it only to be accessible by Game Freak staff members. Mew was added at the very end of the development of Pokemon Red and Blue, after the removal of debug features, freeing up enough space to add the character even though he was told not to change the game any further. Though not intended by the developers to be obtainable due to a glitch, players were able to encounter it. In the spring of 1996, Game Freak's president Satoshi Tajiri used Japanese manga journal CoroCoro Comic as an experimental exhibition of Mew, and distributed its first cards of it through the magazine. This surprised many at Game Freak, including Morimoto. Due to the success of the experiments, on April 15th, 1996, Game Freak announced a contest to publicly release Mew to 150 winners. Tajiri described using Mew to create hype around an invisible character within the game and help keep the interest alive. This created rumors and myths that were passed around on the playgrounds, which resulted in increased game sales. Speaking of game sales, it would be an understatement to say that these games did well. These games were smash hits. It wasn't called Pokemania for nothing. Collectively, Red, Blue, and Green sold over 31 million copies. And in 1998, another version was released. This version was called Pokemon, Special Pikachu Edition Yellow version. This version had differences that made the game more relatable to the anime. Yellow version sold an additional 14 million copies.
Sounds like there's already one inside. It's the mythical Pokemon Mew.
Pokemon has been relevant for over 20 years now. This game series is many people's first RPG experience. With immense choices of team building and the inclusion of certain values, it makes each playthrough different in its own way. In its own right. While the games are considered to be broken through glitches, or just the fact that some of the game mechanics don't work as expected, these games still hold up today. I myself still play them, both on the cartridges and on my 3DS. By no means are these perfect Pokemon games, but they are full of soul and they set a bar, a standard for a new wave of games for the future. Hey there guys, thanks for listening to the video. We at Limit Media really appreciate it. If you like this, or would like to check out any more of our content, feel free to click one of these videos. Thanks for watching, and we hope you were able to learn at least something about Pokemon that you didn't know. My name's Nick, and I'm signing out.